This is Kent Molgat with KelownaNow, joined by Stephen Fuhr, our MP for Kelowna-Lake Country. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So first of all, this is my first chance to spend a bit of time with you since your amazing...
Since the parking lot of the Capri Hotel.
Well, okay. You brought it up. We did run into each other at the parking lot of the Capri Hotel, and we had a little conversation, and I said something along the lines of, it's great that you're putting in this effort, but you don't have a hope. I mean, it really seemed that looking at the history of this particular riding, you didn't have a hope.
I thought it was possible. I didn't think it was probable. But, you know, got the right team together and had the right plan and had enough time to talk to the people that I needed to talk to. And that probability increased as we marched towards the election day.
Right. I mean, we had a bit of Trudeau mania going on. That helped, right? And it sounds like you just put in a lot of effort.
Right. I don't think the Trudeau mania, the red wave or whatever you want to call it, I don't think that played much here. It didn't. There was an anti-Harper sentiment, that was for sure. But I don't think necessarily the red wave was part of the formula of things that happened to make this election swing my direction.
But it was an amazing accomplishment to win in a place where people probably wrote you off, and that may have been one of the reasons as well. Is that probably your challenger on the Conservative side really thought it was in the bag?
There's a whole bunch of factors. I had a great team of people, and that team grew as we got closer. I mean, it was tough to find. I'd have people come up to me in the street and said, "I'm behind you, man, but don't put my name on any lists and don't tell my friends." So it was hard. It was a hard charging at the beginning. It never got easy, and I didn't think that it was truly going to happen or it could possibly happen until probably 10 days out. At 10 days out, I'd had enough conversations with the community and had a real good feel, and we had done all the work. I thought if we could get the vote out on election day, that we legitimately had a chance at winning.
Right. So, what brought you to politics? I mean, you've got this great background of flying fighter planes. I mean, does that prepare a person for politics?
Well, no, it doesn't actually. Well, you know, I was in the military for 20 years. I was an entrepreneur in town and ran a business for a couple of years. I flew corporate jets. So I've done a number of things, ironically, all relating back to aviation in one way or another. But I guess at some point, probably around 2010, I saw a government of the day that I had supported my whole life. I'd voted a certain way my entire life. Conservative. Progressive conservative was, I would have identified probably closer with that. I just saw that Harper government doing things that I disagreed with. And the more I looked, the more I became discontent with what I saw. And I guess I had a couple options. I could complain about it on Facebook, or I could try and do something about it. And ultimately, that's what I did.
Right. So let's get into a few issues. Right now, the Okanagan finds itself in this situation where the province of Alberta is attacking our wine industry.
Yeah.
Calling it a wine war, I see some headlines, but I don't see the wine industry lobbing any bombs towards Alberta. It seems a little one-sided.
Yeah, well, exactly. The wine industry is not involved in this. It's a big deal. I mean, BC Wine, it's $170 million worth of retail sales in Alberta. That's what it means to BC, and mostly the Okanagan. If you break out where all the wineries are, so it's unfair, it's punitive, and it needs to be fixed. I have brought this issue up in Pacific Caucus and National Caucus, which is Wednesdays, every Wednesday that we've had since this happened, to make sure that my colleagues in the federal government understand the magnitude of this issue in our region. The Prime Minister is well aware. I've talked to him about it, and he is obviously in conversations with the Premier about the pipeline and the wine war and everything else that's happening in relation to those issues. I don't think we're trying to bring the temperature down on this, not amp up the rhetoric, right? So just because you don't see him taking a real stance on the wine issue in the media doesn't mean that he's not aware, and doesn't mean that he's not working on it, because I know for a fact that he is.
So there are things going on behind the scenes, you're saying, that are working towards trying to
resolve the issue. And most recently, I believe that the province of British Columbia is challenging Premier Notley and her stance on putting this trade embargo in, because they don't feel that she's got the authority to do it. We have a trade relationship, we have a trade agreement with Alberta, and I don't. I think that it's reasonable that just because somebody's angry about something else,
right,
that you can do this. So we'll see where that goes. But I mean, a lot of really smart people are saying that she doesn't have the right to do it. So
right. So which brings us to the pipeline itself. This pipeline follows a route that's already there, but it would greatly increase the capacity to bring oil to the coast, right, where it then gets on ships. And this is not fully refined bitumen, it's called, right, I suppose. And we hear that this is harder to clean up in the case of a spill. So it doesn't seem crazy to be saying, whoa, wait a minute here. Are we fully prepared to deal with the chances of a spill?
Right, which I think is completely legitimate. I think that we should be prepared to deal with a spill if we have a spill. And
so is the province of BC wrong to be putting the brakes on for a moment and have a closer look at that question?
I think that has already been asked and answered. I mean, the National Energy Board looked at the project. The government put in a parallel process because we weren't convinced that there was enough environmental assessment within the National Energy Board. So we've looked at this from a couple different directions to make sure that that's been satisfied. We just announced a few months ago a $1.5 billion oceans protection program that's got a whole bunch of arms to it, but one of the things is emergency response and disaster cleanup. So there's provisions there in case that happens. This project's in the national interest, and the government's been pretty clear that it's a national project, and we've also been pretty clear that we want to get to a knowledge-based low-carbon economy. That's what we want to do. So if you look at all the pipelines projects that were on the table when we started, not all of them are going to happen. Some of them will, as a balanced approach to getting to where we want to go. Because I mean, this is important for our economy. It's important for Alberta. It's important for Canada. So
you're saying ultimately there will be no debate on this?
Well, there has been debate, and it's been decided that this project's in the national interest, and it's time to move forward with it.
Right, but it's the province of BC is not going to stop this pipeline if they conclude in their own minds that it is not advisable.
Apparently, they don't have the authority to do that. The authority for this pipeline rests with the federal government, and there has been debate and there has been discussion. There's been a lot of work put into this, and I'm sensitive and I appreciate the fact that some people in our province don't want this pipeline. I totally get that, but some people do, and some people understand that it's important for Canada. And again, as part of a balanced approach moving forward, some energy projects need to happen, and some of them won't happen. Right. And as we get to where we need to go, which is low carbon, knowledge-based economy, this is part of that balanced approach. And also, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are strengthening up environmental protection. We are, making strides on action on climate change. So this is part of a balanced approach, a balance that we didn't have under the previous government, and they didn't get any pipelines built.
Right. So back to your own political path. I think some people were suggesting that, Stephen Fuhr, nice guy, but where is he? A little bit not so much in touch with the community, but it seems like lately you've made an extra effort. I've seen some letters to the editor, and you're engaging a little more with the people here.
I'm making a conscious effort to engage more in mediums that I hadn't before. So the paper, for sure. I've always had a fairly strong online presence. I mean, when you get elected as an MP, you're given a budget to run your operation, and it's really up to you to decide how you're going to effectively manage that. And at the end of the day, the MP, a very high level, is responsible for a couple things: federal visibility in the riding, and bringing resources, fiscal resources, to the community. Right. And you have to figure out how you can best do that. In my opinion, it's all about the community's voice in Ottawa. I got to be in Ottawa to be that voice. And it's about relationships. Every government's different. This particular government, all MPs have great access to ministers, but ministers are pulled in a million directions. So the key, in my opinion, is to who are the chiefs of staff, who are the key policy people on the files that are managing the files. So that just requires me to be in Ottawa a little bit more. I also chair the National Defence Committee, which is another responsibility that I quite like and I enjoy, and it also requires more of my time in Ottawa. So, to be fair, I would say it's legitimate that you'll see me around town a little bit less than what you're used to with the previous MP, but at the end of the day, I think this should all be about, what did I bring to the community at the end of the day? Right. We've had some excellent federal visibility. We've had a national caucus, Pacific caucus, pre-budget consultations. We had the Royals. Our hockey team, our girls hockey team, went to Ottawa. So we've gotten quite a few things for our community in the last 2 years, and we've some pretty big money, and not just money, but projects like Southeast Kelowna Water got about $25 million in federal funding for that project. It's half. They got half the money.
Right.
UBC Okanagan's done very, very well. And I mean, I could go on, but the bottom line is I'd like to be judged on my performance at the end of the day. Did I bring federal visibility? Did I bring resources? And that's what I'm focused on.
And there's one area where I see the federal direction kind of matching up nicely with what's going on locally. Housing is a big issue in Kelowna, and I know your government has a $40 billion housing sort of plan. I guess this happens over years. It's not like there's $40 billion sitting there, but are you helping people locally get whatever access they can to that commitment?
Right, so that is a $40 billion commitment. Half the money's federal, so 20. And housing is a provincial responsibility at the end of the day. So we've taken leadership on it. We've put resources into it. And at the end of the day, I work with the municipality, the mayor of Lake Country, the mayor of Kelowna, and council will decide, because they know the community the best. They'll decide primarily which projects they think would benefit the community the most. I communicate with them. And basically, once those projects are figured out and which stovepipes of money may be applicable federally, then I go to work lobbying for those projects in Ottawa. That's how that works.
Well, terrific. And I'm glad to see that you've got that as a priority, and you're going to be communicating a little more with people here, and maybe coming and talking to me again.
I'll come anytime you ask me to come.
Terrific. I really appreciated our time.
Pleasure.
Stephen Fuhr, the MP for Kelowna-Lake Country. You're watching Kelowna Now.